Hello, my merciful brothers and sisters. It is I, Mr. Mercy, coming at you here. I wanted to make this video because I've seen some discussion going on about microtransactions, and especially with, the microtransactions in not only Destiny 2, but also Shadow of War and Star Wars Battlefront II, because the beta dropped recently, and they've been talking about that and the microtransactions that has, which I knew it was going to have going. I knew Battlefront 2 was going to have microtransactions going in. That's not a surprise to me. But I wanted to make this video to kind of give my opinion on the microtransaction thing, and basically like the loot box economy, in general. Now, I used to watch this show. I still kind of watch it, but there's a show on YouTube called Extra Credits. It's a really, really good show, and they are strong believers on extra credits for microtransactions. And while they mainly talk about microtransactions for mobile games, and they think that, when done right, they give Fallout Shelter as an example of microtransactions done right in a mobile game, it really helps, it helps the consumers who, maybe maybe they're unsure about buying a mobile game. So like the whole try it before you buy it kind of a thing works really, really well for mobile games, and I have to agree. But even Extra Credits tends to draw the line at a AAA $60 game. And I've seen so many, stories from Rooster Teeth, from Jim Sterling, from a bunch of these outlets, condemning the $60 microtransaction game. And I get that, that it seems ludicrous to suggest that, $60 isn't enough, and like they need microtransactions to further make more money off of us. But here's the thing, and here's why the microtransactions in $60 games don't necessarily bother me. What does bother me is some of this carving up of game like portions into DLC, and I think that DLC is the real culprit here. But I'm going to get into a little bit about that and about pre-order culture in a little bit. But from what I see when I see a AAA game with microtransactions, especially gambling ones like we've been seeing in NBA 2K, WWE 2K just revealed that they have them in there, and stuff like Overwatch, for example. I don't actually mind those because, or even just the real world currency to virtual currency method as well. I don't actually mind that because I understand, and this is what a lot of people don't understand, is that games are fucking expensive to make. All right. I actually have a graphic, and I'll pull it up on screen here for you. But so you all, if you're about my age, like in your 20s or maybe your late teens, you could probably think back to a time back during the PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube era of when games. I mean, they were still pretty expensive back then. They were about like $50 I think for a brand new game. I think it was the Xbox 360 that raised the standard to the now $60. But back then games were still pretty expensive. They were like $50, and there was no such thing as DLC. There was no such thing as microtransactions in there. What you paid for, you got. And people look to that and say, oh, that's the glory days of gaming when we didn't have all of these microtransactions and DLCs and everything shoved down our throats. And they say, well, how come we can't go back to the way it used to be, where when we buy a $60 game, we get all the content in that game and don't have to pay more money. And I will tell you the reason why that's the case. It's because back then, this is what this graphic points out. This graphic is from a research thing that IGN did about the economics of game development. Back for like an Xbox, PlayStation 2, GameCube kind of game in that range, they would usually be made for between $3 million to $10 million, right? That was the budget for a game of that quality back then. So now, the reason why microtransactions, this is the kicker, the reason why transactions exist, because do you know how much it costs to make a game now? Somebody I have another post here from, I forget what website this was. It was some notable question and answer site, but this person, who has 25 years of experience, I guess, with the industry, said that he estimates Titan, which would eventually become Overwatch, that was canceled in 2013, of course, and then became Overwatch. He estimated that cost between $50 million and $140 million to make. And if I'm remembering correctly, when it was announced, when Destiny was announced, the first Destiny game, that cost like $500 million to make. Like, these games are getting more and more expensive to make as we go along. So excuse me for, not jumping on the bandwagon. This is, I paid $60 for this game, I deserve all the content in this game, because I realize that game has gotten like, 10 to 20 times more expensive to make, and still charging that $60, people probably won't see it this way, and I know Jim Sterling would probably have a fit if he heard this, but that's actually doing the consumer a favor, because if they were actually to charge what they should to make back their investment on this game, and basically not have to charge us for microtransactions or DLC or anything like that, then they would be charging like $200 a game. Like, so we would be paying as much for games as we do for consoles these days. And even any of the console manufacturers will tell you they're losing money on the consoles they make. They don't make their money in consoles. So think about how much the games would have to increase in price. But so now I want to talk a little bit about pre-order culture, just a little bit, and people getting mad about pre-order bonuses and stuff. And personally, if you're asking me, yes, I do think it's that having bonuses for pre-orders to incentivize pre-orders, and cutting content out into DLC, because DLC is purely profit. Because if you look at what I just said about game development and why they have microtransactions, then the DLC, on the other hand, as opposed to microtransactions, DLC also takes money and resources and time to make. So essentially, they're putting more money into it to get more money back. Whereas the microtransactions, they aren't putting that much work into that to kind of like get the revenue back for their investment with this game. And that's a little bit more forgivable to me. So while I agree that pre-order bonuses have kind of messed with people's conceptions about gaming and encourage this sort of pre-order culture, I do think that pre-orders are, like them or not, a necessary evil, because pre-orders, and this is what I didn't know until like a year or so ago, is that pre-orders are crucial to gaming, because they tell investors, and they tell people who are putting the money into these games, how much they expect to make from the game. So if a game doesn't have enough pre-orders, then well, maybe that the companies that are investing into the game company won't be so keen on putting forth the money needed to develop the next game. If the pre-order numbers aren't looking good, because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, making money. And so I think that I wish there was another way that we could gauge audience acceptance of a game without having to do pre-orders, because I do agree that pre-orders have turned into kind of a sleazy thing, but they are necessary for at this point in the gaming industry for our favorite games to continue to be made. Because if the investors in these companies don't feel like their investment is going to make a profit, then they're not going to invest, and those game companies are going to have a harder time making the games that we want to make. And if they can make them at all, it's going to take longer, it's going to probably be more expensive, and eventually those companies who are also out there to make money, they're just not going to see the benefit of it, and they're going to go out of business. So yes, I do believe that while pre-order culture is kind of a little bit dirty, I do think we need it. And currently, I only ever pre-order games that I really want on launch day, or if they have some kind of really awesome pre-order bonus, that not necessarily like in-game content. Like I'm talking like physical extra goods, that are kind of neat, like I don't know, like little trinkets, stuff that come with the game. Those are the kind of pre-order bonuses I like, not necessarily like in-game missions or anything. Yeah, so I only pre-order a game if I expect to get it on launch day, and even then, I don't keep all my pre-orders. Like I'll pre-order something like maybe after E3 and like the heat of the moment, it's like, oh, I want that game, let me pre-order it. But I think I pre-ordered like 3 or 4 games out of E3 this year. And I've only actually bought one, and that was Cuphead, and because it was cheap. So I don't pre-order that much, but I do support microtransactions because, like I said, they do need to, make money back on that investment. That this is a lot of money to be throwing into games, and I think it's a kind of like a naive and nostalgic entitlement to say, oh, I paid $60 for this game, I deserve all the content up front. Because if this game was being made for as little as they used to be making them for, which was like $3 to $10 million, then yeah, you deserve all that content for that price, because that was all reasonable. They weren't spending too much to make these games, and so they didn't have to charge more to make back on that investment, and because they could invest the money they wanted into it, and people would pay that $50, and everybody would have a good profit, and everybody be happy. But now with games being more expensive to make, I understand why microtransactions exist, and I hope you now understand why microtransactions exist, and hopefully all the fear mongering and the hate, and the hate bandwagon that people like Jim Sterling and all these other big gaming YouTubers like to present is, oh, the company is screwing us, they're just so greedy, they want to make all the money. I mean, yes, they want to make money, but they're only doing this because they probably wouldn't be making money without it, because especially in the case of Overwatch, where there is no DLC and pretty much the entire game, the future development for that game is entirely fueled on loot boxes. So to keep getting the content we want and to help companies see that this investment that they've made is worth it, I do think we do need to continue supporting microtransactions. And here's the kicker: if you don't support the idea of microtransactions, then don't buy them. Okay? I mean, I personally do, and I'm going to continue buying loot boxes. I'm going to continue buying microtransactions when I can afford them in the games that I want to support, in the companies I want to support. But if you're not a fan of that, that's fine. Just leave them alone. But I guess that's really all I had to say on the matter. I've been wanting to do this video. This was a totally off-script video, but I wanted to do it because I've been seeing a lot of people talk about this, and I wanted to give my 2 cents on it. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Remember, if you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. Subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, I'm Mr. Mercy. Peace, everyone.